Hey, Joe.
Hey, hey,
Uh,
Larry.
hey, congratulations. What an amazing project.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about it and to air it. I hope everyone enjoyed it who got to see it. Yeah, it's a few months removed from making it now, but it's still cool to get to see it and think back on it.
Yeah, what an incredible, courageous thing you did taking on this project. And must have been 2019, I guess, when you had the vision or the inspiration to, or was it just into 2020, I guess? But
Yeah,
you managed
late.
to put it together. My mind's going like, how did he do this? Wow.
Yeah, I can't keep track of dates either. When you said 2019, it felt like it was 2019, but yeah, it was late 2020 and then into 2021.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us a little bit, maybe I should back up a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Joe. I read on your website that you have a background or an interest in comedy, so I'd love to learn more about that. And this
Yeah,
is taped incidentally, so we'll be happy to share it with you afterwards if you like.
sure. Great. Yeah, so I have a background both in comedy and in a lot of documentary work, formerly in journalism. But I've done stand up and a lot of comedy writing, satire writing. So this is a field and an industry that I knew pretty well and
Mm,
was interested in. And then when the pandemic hit, it kind of the idea for the film came from that. And that one, it was an industry that I don't think people would have thought of in terms of how the pandemic was affecting it, because I mean, people were talking about restaurants and some entertainment fields about how the pandemic was affecting it, but this isn't one where you can have takeout. You know, it's a very like you had to be there physically for it. But then just from a personal standpoint, with my background in comedy and in stand up, it was something that just disappeared and caused me and a lot of other people to think about
mm,
what's the future for this? How are people going to adapt? And there were a lot of different adaptations, like you saw in the film, especially early on. People trying to do shows over Zoom, which doesn't really work, or trying to do just like virtual, trying to replace the live event with a virtual thing, and everyone had to adapt and try to figure out what worked. So as I was seeing that happen, I kind of jumped into this would be a cool thing to document,
mm.
and see like the entrepreneurial creative spirit and how people are going to get out of it and create something new.
Yeah, well, congratulations for the amount of film festivals also who've selected your document, your film here, documentary. I guess
Yeah.
we'd say. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious to know more about like the individuals that were featured in this film. Like, were they already established contacts? Were they former colleagues, or how did you make this come together so quickly and under all the provisions, and restrictions? Man, were you flying all over the place? Or did you have people on site who were filming for you, or what was going on?
I was flying all over the place, which was it was safe and made it work, but it was weird at first because like plenty of other people at the time, I hadn't flown a plane in like a year,
Yeah.
probably like 10 months. So it was just weird to adjust to that. And I was flying to different cities, taking COVID tests when I got back. I had a lot of things up like the Q-tip up my nose almost every week for a couple of months just to be safe.
Yeah.
But the contact started. One kind of built off another, which was really cool. So I contacted a lot of comedy clubs at the start in Chicago where I live, and asked how they were doing, and then from there decided to like that was a kind of like almost like the pilot phase. Like let's talk to these clubs, see what kind of story builds from there. And then a couple people there, like the manager of Zanies in Chicago, wanted to put me in touch with people. Um, I got connected to the people in Austin who got me connected with people in New York. And then the comedian contact started. Mark Norman, who was featured heavily in the film, I did a podcast with him a couple years ago. Great guy and really accessible. And I asked him on a whim to be in this movie, and he said yes. And then from there, I got in touch with other comedians. So it was like a lot of things building off the previous thing from like the original idea of just contacting
Yeah.
comedy clubs in Chicago. And I think part of the reason was there was such a feeling of like we're in this together, and
Yeah.
people wanted to promote other people to be in the film, which was really cool to see. There's like a lot of unity and like, hey, you should talk to this person, you should talk to this person.
Mm.
So this big feeling of like everybody in the film wanted to make something great with us when we were making it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, and also just, what came up for me is also you were able to capture the innovation while it was underway, like filming through the heat lamps and the amphitheaters and the parks and and the balconies, and all these ideas that were playing out, during the process. I thought that was really brilliant. And I'm sure it was very empowering for the comedians themselves and the comedian club or comedy club owners to be featured, to tell their story. And because 'cause I'm sure it was very challenging as it was for all of us, even, like, emotionally, psychologically, physically, not being able to get out there and being around people. That's a challenge.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I also love the idea of creating this comedy film festival. I think somebody mentioned it. I thought
Yeah.
kind of a really super cool, idea, and I wanted to talk a little bit about, the live streaming and how that broadens your audience. Were you finding that for the local comedians who have I'm sure, and comedy club owners, they had a set audience, I'm sure that did attract on a recurring basis. When you're live streaming now and that broadens your audience, did it make it sort of more global, or like was Canada involved in watching some of your films, or was it like more just the local audience, community that live streamed in, out of
Yeah.
curiosity?
So for those live stream shows, you're talking about the live stream shows in the clubs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what they found from that, I think this is really cool, is I mean, you're going to get the people that know the club and they're probably local and they're just watching from home. But the advantage that they see to that, and that they might continue even as things open up, is you can put on a show in Chicago and have somebody in Boston pay to go see it. And it's a different experience. It's a different experience being home and watching something versus sitting there with a drink and laughing at people next to you.
Yeah.
But you can just pay for the different experience. And it's a really cool thing that you can bring people from across the country or across in Canada too, together into this one room instead of having to be in that one room. So I think what you're going to see in the future is it won't be everywhere, but I think a lot of clubs or theaters will maybe present the option to people that you could be home and still experience that. And that doesn't diminish. I think being there live is always going to be in many ways more powerful, but giving that option just expands the audience and the
Mhm.
possibilities.
Yeah, super cool. I just have one other observation and then 2 questions, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, of
And you
course.
can ask us questions if
Of
you
course,
want.
sure.
My yeah, that whole idea about the comedians having a live audience to be able to sort of feel the energy of the audience, and to be able to react spontaneously and so on. How has that changed their game, or has it? Like, they have adapted, and that it was brilliant how you showed, how they were able to, sort of work out the technology and have, even integrate their own comedian or comic sense into that. I turn up your speaker or turn it down or whatever, and they're still using the comedy path throughout that process. I thought that was brilliant. Have they been able to adjust to not having a live audience, or will that always be important to them, I suppose? Like, what are next steps for them? Do we get back into the brick and mortar, into the comedy houses, or has this changed forever?
I think it goes back a little bit, but in a lot of ways, it has changed forever. I think the live show is always going to be the special thing. Like having an audience face to face with you is really
Mm,
special, and the energy in that room cannot be matched. But what
mm.
you're seeing is, it's like the example in there of the live stream show was like a really well done version of that. But there were a lot of others like over Zoom that they didn't get that live response, and it wasn't as powerful. And what you we saw a lot of during the pandemic, and I think this is what changes the game and what will continue in the future is comedians jumping more into like sketch comedy, podcasting, and then it gets mocked sometimes, but TikTok even just like short
Yes.
60-second like comedy videos that
Mm,
anyone can access at any part just because they all have a smartphone in front of them. And I
mm.
think that is going to be the thing that's like the entry into comedy is creating stuff for the digital space. And the live show is always going to be special. It's always going to be a great event for people to attend. But the digital space and using, like I said, podcasting, sketches, TikTok, whatever it is,
Whatever it's gonna be, yeah.
yeah, that's the thing that's more accessible now.
Yeah, yeah, it's slightly different skill set for them, I'm sure, but But the audience needs it. We need it. We need comedy, you know, what can
Yeah.
we say? We need to have that sort of reprieve. We need to be able to loosen up, like, and let go of some of the anxiety and the fear that got created around this for sure. And even this film festival has had to pivot online, right? We've always been in front of an
Right.
audience for years, so this is very interesting. So my 2 questions for you then are, final questions are like, so what did you see as being your key, learnings, and benefits from doing this project? And then what were your key challenges, and how did you adapt to those challenges?
Sure. The key some things that I learned from this was uh, we kind of approached the story as we have to talk to club owners, we have to talk to comedians, and there's a kind of two different story arcs there. But what I learned from that was there's kind of an entrepreneurial spirit to everybody in this film. Like even comedians, I kind of look at comedy club owners always as business people, but they have a creative drive that makes their business successful and brings their vision to life. And at the same time, the comedians have an entrepreneurial vibe that like causes their success. Like you have to be an entrepreneur to be your own business, kind of to be in in the comedy space or music entertainment in general. So I really saw that entrepreneurial angle to this and learned a lot about that. I never really thought about it in comedy like that before, and that's kind of what the whole story was. And then
Mhm.
just like what I said before about things building off each other and people wanting this film to be good and like recommending people,
Mm,
there was this vibe of like everyone pulling together, and that was really inspiring to see, especially during COVID when things felt tense and divided and people were scared. Just in industry, and I'm sure there are other industries like this where everyone's kind of rooting for each other, which was really nice to see. The challenges, the biggest one is the obvious one of traveling and trying to shoot a
mm,
film during a pandemic is
mhm,
crazy. We had to rely on a lot of local shooters just to, we probably saw in the credits, there's a lot of additional cameras just to limit the amount of people that were traveling. There are a lot of protocols, especially in the United States. The protocols are different state by state, so you have to know like what in Texas it was a lot different than in New York or in Pennsylvania. There's all over the place, and you have to like adjust to different people's sensibilities and what they're comfortable
mhm,
with. If they're comfortable wearing a mask on the shoot or not wearing a mask, and navigating all that was really tough. And I don't know if it's something that I'll ever have to deal with again in making future films. Hopefully not. Like fingers crossed
mhm,
that
mhm,
that's not an issue in the future. But it
mm,
was a really rewarding experience in a way because I think it helped me and our crew just be adaptable. And I think those
mhm.
are skills that are going to translate to something else in the future.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for sharing those insights. And, this is your first film project, Joe?
First feature film, yeah. I've done a lot of short documentaries, but this is my first feature
Okay.
length film. Yeah,
Okay, because that's obviously also brilliant. Yeah, a lot of courage there, a lot of attention to detail, a lot of community focus. Obviously, you're a community-minded person to be able to bring all those folks together. So, congratulations on this piece of work, and wish you much success, continued success with it. And you're showcasing it in various film festivals. So, congratulations on that. And any last thoughts, Joe? What are your next projects? Like, what's happening in your world right now?
yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity again. This is great. I love having these conversations. For me personally, I'm working on a lot of sketch comedy. So, like as I just said, that comedians are jumping more into sketch comedy. I'm
Yeah.
shooting a bunch of sketches now. The next film we haven't planned yet. I've worked in production on a few other films, but hopefully the next like big feature length film that I direct, it does not have the pandemic
Mm.
curveball related to it. So I'm looking forward to that. But this has been a great experience, excuse me.
If
And
you could talk to somebody, Joe, and make that happen, we'd be really appreciative, to get rid of the pandemic altogether, that would be awesome.
I'll see what I can do. I don't know if I have that full, but yeah, hopefully the next one goes a little bit easier. But this has been a great experience.
Oh, fantastic. Well, congratulations, and, maybe you'll be heading up that film festival for the comedians in the future. We'll see. We look forward
It'd
to
be
seeing
great.
more of your work in the future. Take care. Thank you for being here, okay? Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We'll see you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.